Okay, one correction I want to make from yesterday, not in a din, but just in a time. I said yesterday, years ago, the Rebbe would come at 4 o'clock in the morning, say a maimer. It wasn't 4, 3 o'clock in the morning. The Rebbe would say a maimer, like for 45 minutes. Most guys went home, and then Rabbi Yael, Khan, and the Bachum would do chazorah for a few hours, and then like 6 o'clock they went to the mikveh, and they were back for 10 o'clock davening. Okay, now davening the first day of Shavuos. So we mentioned the various different machlekes and about saying brachas in the morning if you're up a whole night. Do you say brachas? Don't you say brachas? And all that. But there's a very interesting custom many people have, and officially Chabad custom is that we don't say it, and that's the akdomis. It's in the Sidurim. It's printed a whole poem about basically if all the water in the world would be ink, and all the grass in the world would be feathers, and all the heavens would be parchment, they would never be able to express the beauty of Torah and Hashem and all that stuff. They would, that's what Akdomis is. In many places, it's a very, very special thing. The Rebbe writes that our minhag is not to say Akdomis. The Sfardim, by the way, don't say Akdomis. I believe in Ger, they don't say Akdomis. And what's interesting is because the Rebbe writes, it's not really known the reason why we don't say Akdomis. What's interesting, the Rebbe himself did say Akdomis, because the Rebbe's father said Akdomis, so the Rebbe himself would say Akdomis between Aliyahs. But the way they would do it, there's also machlekes in halacha how to do it. You call up the kohen for the Aliyah, and before, the Sefer Torah is still covered, and then before he made the brachas, you would read the thing of Akdomis. But it's interesting because in Shara Kailul, from the Rebbe's grandfather, great-grandfather, he writes that it could be the reason why Chassidim didn't say Akdomis. Because it's not mentioned anywhere in Gemara, and it's only in Minhagim Sfarim to talk about saying Akdomis. Shara Kailul writes it could be that the Chassidim in those days davened very long. And they were in the middle of davening. And they had to stop already for Kriyas Torah. They had to stop to listen to Torah. They didn't want a Torah reading. They didn't want to wait longer. So they didn't want this Akdomis to be, just kept them longer from davening properly. But the Perl, our custom is that we don't say Akdomis. I will confess my sin. There were times, all the years of the shul, we basically did say Akdomis because we had a lot of people in the shul that wanted to say Akdomis, so we said Akdomis. The last few years we didn't say Akdomis because Crown changed. First minyan says Akdomis. So if you want to have a shorter davening, you come to the second minyan. Plus the second minyan is having a big dairy kiddush after davening. Out of the generosity of the hearts of the administration and board of Chabad of Beverly Hills, we do allow the first minyan when they finish davening to have cheesecake. That's out of the generosity of our hearts. Yeah, a small piece, just... Okay. It does exist. Okay, now, Kriyas Torah on Shavuos is a whole issue with... we read the Seres HaDibros. There's a campaign in Tavshim Mem. The Rebbe came out with a campaign that everybody should listen to Seres HaDibros, men, women, and children, because the Medrash says that when Hashem was giving the Torah to the Yidden asked for a guarantor. Hashem asked for a guarantor. A guarantee was going to keep it. So the Yidden, the Medrash says, they said, our older people, the rabbis, they'll keep it. Hashem didn't accept. They said, okay, these guys, Hashem didn't accept. When they said, B'nei Erev and Ba'deinu, that our children will be the guarantors for Torah, meaning the next generation, so Hashem accepted it. So therefore, actually in Kriyas Torah of Seres HaDibros, so everybody should be brought to shul. So we know we have the first minyan, second minyan, then in the afternoon, 3 o'clock, there'll be another ice cream party with Kriyas Torah of Seres HaDibros. But you can't just take out a Sefer Torah and read a Seres HaDibros. You have to have a whole kriya with this, 5 aliyahs and maftir and all that. You need to do that. Also, in the second day Yom Tif, There's an interesting thing I want to talk about a little bit. The custom in United Soul, they do it, there's only one day Yom Tov, so they do what's called Yiskir, as far as Neshamas on the first day. We do it on the second day of Yom Tov. Now, to say Yiskir, by the way, you don't need a minyan. Halachically, you don't need a minyan to say Yiskir. So if somebody can't come to shul for whatever reason, they can just say Yiskir at home. And people like to come to shul. But guys are asking, a lot of shluchim, we're having these questions. They're only going to be able, they're out in the sticks, they don't have minyan on a regular basis. So they're only able to get a minyan on the first day of Shavuos. They're not going to have a minyan the second day of Shavuos. Can they say Yiskir on the first day of Shavuos instead of the second day? Because second day they're not going to have a minyan. Which is a question which is asked by a lot of shluchim. All those that ask me, I tell them, no, you can't. Why can't you do Yiskir the first day? What's the problem? Because say Yiskir without a minyan. What's the deal you're doing it first day? And I told them, I'm sure there's Rabbanim disagree with that. But I told them the reason why you can't say Yiskir on the first day in a shul is because conservative and Reform only keep one day Yom Tov. They're all biblical people. So they only keep one day Yom Tov. So they do Yiskir on the first day of Yom Tov. So if a shul today does Yiskir on the first day of Yom Tov, it's mamish what conservative and Reform do, and that you're not allowed to do. Again, I'm sure there are people that disagree with me, but this is what I tell the people that ask me. They cannot do Yiskir, and they said, you don't need a minyan for Yiskir. Tell the people, give them the things, and tell them to go home. They could say Yiskir on the second day Yom Tov, even if you don't have a minyan.
You learn it in the Corona time.
Huh? Yeah, in the Corona time when the people were saying Yiskir at home, it's not a problem. Okay, it's another interesting Chabad minhag by Yiskir. Most people say by Yiskir the person's name and their father's name. You say Yiskir like Aliyah, you call them their name and the father's name. Our minhag is, if you look in the Siddur, that's what it says also. Our minhag is the mother's name. So you would do their name, the name of the person, and their mother's name, not the father's name. But again, if somebody doesn't know the mother's name, they do the father's name. I had somebody sent me a ksuba today to look at. He's doing a wedding. This is lighted today, a very common problem, and that is like you can have a chassan or a kala that their father's not Jewish. The father's not Jewish. So what do you write in the ksuba? In the ksuba, you normally write Avram ben Yitzchak or Sarah bas Avram. I mean, whatever. But if the father's a guy, so what name do you write in the ksuba? So, huh? Adam, no. No, you can't write Avram. Like for instance, for a ger, a convert, you can't write Avram. You have to write Avram Avinu because it has to be clear that he's a ger. Anyway, so there's a machlekes in poskim. Some poskim, it's basically the same thing. The question is, some poskim hold you write just the mother's name. Can't write the father's name, you just write the mother's name. Other Rabbanim, and that's why I was told from a very big Rav in Lubavitch, he told me that by us we do the other way, like the other poskim, you write the person's name, ben the mother's name, ben her father's name. So then you write, let's say, Sarah bas, like Avram ben Sarah bas Yaakov, or Yitzchak, whatever. So some poskim write, you just write the mother's name, and some poskim hold you write the mother's name plus her father's name. But this didn't happen in today's ksuba, but what happens a lot of times is the grandfather's also a guy. The mothers are all Jewish. So then what do? You're going to write, so then they told me you just write the mother's name. You don't keep going back. When you're going to go back 5 generations, ben. You need a big ksuba to do it. No, it's the 2 different opinions in halacha. Some opinions in halacha, it's not a Chabad issue. Some opinions in halacha say you just write the mother's name. Well, if the mother's Jewish, then the kid is Jewish. So that's what, yeah. Many poskim today, by the way, write in every ksuba the last names. When they fill out the ksuba, they write Chosin, what did I write Chosin first time? Avram ben Yitzchak ben Avram, lemishpachas, whatever. A lot of the Nur Rabbanim do that because it's clarity. It just clarifies more. Even a lot of Rabbanim want, when they sign the witnesses should sign, if his name is Yitzchak ben Avram, will sign Yitzchak ben Avram lemishpachas, the family of whatever, Klein, and then they'll write Eid. I personally don't, because keep out him Rabbi Yosef when I was doing that stuff that we don't do it. But there's nothing wrong doing it. If somebody wants to do it, they could do it. But still, you can't just. Okay, what happens if a guy's name is Avram? Let's say his name is Avram Klein, yeah? And you don't write in the Ksuba Avram ben Yitzchak Klein. You just write Avram Klein. Apidin, you write Avram Klein. You don't write Avram ben Yitzchak Klein. Apidin, it's a kosher Ksuba. Because it's clear who it is, you know? I had a whole issue today. It's like I have to go. But I had an whole issue today. How you spell Rina. The girl's name is Rina in a ksuba. And the guy called me right after the chuppah was Yehupitz, I don't know where it was, out of town somewhere. And the Rav, who was a Talmud Chacham, wasn't a Chabad guy, it was another Rav from the family, I don't know, he did it. And he wrote Rina Reish Yud Nun Hey. But the girl was very, very upset because her grandmother told her that her name is Rina without a Yud. The grandmother, I don't know how from the grandmother was, but she said it's Rina Reish Nun Hey. So the shaila is, how do you write Rina? Do you write it? And if the girl is from, then even though she spells the name not necessarily correct, you still go by the way she writes it. There's a whole issue. A lot of people, from people, spell their names wrong. So the shaila, what do? You do it the way halacha says to write it, you do what they say to write it. But to be continued.